Good afternoon and welcome back to Poe Discussions. Jeanie, how's it going today?
Hot. I
Yes,
want
it's
to. I
very
want to say the Good Morning Vietnam line from Robin Williams. It's damn hot. It's hot.
yes.
Some crotch pot cooking. You know, it's pretty much what I feel.
I forgot about that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, we have a special guest with us, and you've seen him before. He's also one of our regulars on our Poe Unplugged evenings, and that is Steve Boilard. And we want to welcome Steve.
Hi.
How's it?
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being with us this, for us, very warm afternoon. We talked about the weather before we got started, and he's in a balmy area of 78 to 80 degrees. So,
I'll
yeah,
take it.
yes, absolutely. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the new things that have been going on, so our listeners and viewers can catch up with you.
Sure. Well, again, I'm here in California. I'm a retired college professor, and in retirement, which I highly recommend to everybody, to continue to receive a pension for not working. Uh, I'm finally pursuing a lot of those things I'd always wanted to pursue, and among them are a lot of travel, and I write a blog about those travels called Chasing Phantoms that you can find online. Uh, it's really it really allows me to kind of combine two things, which is writing, which I
Hmm.
really enjoy doing, and traveling, and frankly, a third thing, which is learning about the places that I'm visiting. The blog is kind of a forcing mechanism for me to really understand the history of where I've been, et cetera. So you can see all that online.
Okay.
But the other thing I've been doing is just dabbling and doing a lot of writing and reading, catching up on those books that you always said you want to read someday,
Hmm.
never get around to it. Now I really don't have much of an excuse. So I'm really plowing through that long list of books. And then writing. And among the stuff I write is there's been a lot of, I have a real fondness for Edgar Allan Poe,
Hmm.
and which dates back to when I was in college. And as we all talk about, and I think one of the reasons I am so excited every month to connect with Poe Unplugged is just there is a community of people who really kind of get Poe, different aspects of it, enjoy different
Hmm.
pieces of it, but there's so much richness in there. And I have both taken the opportunity to kind of connect with a lot of those people, a lot of those art forms, and then
Hmm.
to dabble a little in my own writing some stuff, including, as you just said, my most recent Poe book, which is called Potable Poe,
Yes.
uh,
And
a cocktails of mystery and imagination. Very few people get the pun, which, of course, Poe had written tales of mystery and imagination. We're doing
hmm.
cocktails of mystery and imagination.
Yes. Well, kind of before we talk about Potable Poe, one question I have on your travel blog, do you do a lot of research about the places you travel before you get there, or do you discover things while you're there?
Very emphatically, I do that. I learn about it when I'm there. I discover
Okay.
things when I'm there, and I again, there's many different ways to travel. I'm not saying that mine is the right way, but I do very little preparation. I just decide where I want to go. I
Mm-hmm.
don't book hotels. I don't know where I'm going to stop on a given night because I want to remain open to the ability to stop wherever you want. And then I talk with locals a lot and learn the
Okay.
stories from them. And then usually in the evening when I'm writing the blog, then I'll do some research on digging a little deeper into stuff that I've learned. But I don't want to go in with preconceived notions. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of the fun. It's there are so many. I mean, you probably we were just talking about travel a moment ago. There's so much to learn in this world, and frankly, from my opinion, the people are what make it so rewarding and fun, and satisfying. And I just want to connect with those people and learn their stories and
Yeah.
learn their histories. So I don't want to walk in with a bunch of preconceived notions and have these people all put in a box already.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That really does. Because like when I travel, I do look up places where I want to go. I do a little bit of research, and then what I love is when we get there, we're doing some things and we talk to local people and they tell us about, oh, but did you know about this? And
Yeah.
it's like only the locals kind of know about these different things. So I get what you're saying.
And
Totally.
serendipity is a wonderful thing, but again, I acknowledge that it's worth having some understanding of where you're going. Particularly, one way that my approach doesn't work sometimes is
Mhm.
I will arrive somewhere, I'll come, and then I'll do my research and I'll realize, oh my gosh, there was this thing I should have done that I didn't do.
Okay.
So it's
Mhm.
nice to at least get a little bit in there, but I
Yeah.
guess I'm a bit of a purist and just want to parachute in
Yeah.
with a blank slate.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's awesome. And when you do find those things after you get back, when you're doing a little bit more research into it, that just gives you an excuse to go back.
Well, that's absolutely true. And actually, I should tell you, apropos of what you've just said, is a couple of years ago, I was in Pennsylvania, and it was in a town called Phoenixville. And there is a theater there called the Colonial Theater. And the Colonial Theater is where parts of the 1958 movie The Blob was filmed.
I've been there.
And you have been,
I
okay.
think is it the one where they I think I have been. Yes. Yes.
And so they
Yes.
this this is kind of their claim to fame, particularly Colonial Theater's claim to fame is being in the movie The Blob. And so every year they hold something called Blob Fest. And
Yes.
I missed it the first time it came through, and I said,
Mhm.
I'm going to get back there someday. And next week, next Friday, I am going to be in Phoenixville for Blobfest.
That is awesome. Oh, I
So
love that.
watch Chasing Phantoms for blow by blow reports on Blobfest.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I did. I had to think about it. I was like, yes, I forgot the name of it. But when I did the trip with that Victoria Price organizes, that was the Poe slash Price trip or Price slash Poe trip. We that was our last area to go was in Pennsylvania, and that we did that. Yes, and saw
Well,
the
and
organ come
actually,
up, and yeah,
in the 6 degrees of separation, Victoria Price is actually going to be introducing a movie at
nice.
Blobfest this year.
Okay,
So, yeah. And
awesome,
she was at
awesome.
PoeFest just a year or two ago.
Yes, that was when we did the trip, was when she was
Okay.
there. Yeah. So, oh, that is awesome. You'll have, yeah, well, I'll be anxious to read about Blobfest because it looks
Yes.
like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Judy,
Mhm.
thoughts, questions so far?
Just make sure you duck in case the blob is about. I'm just saying.
Yeah. One of the great matters of debate is the 1958 Blob versus the 1988 remake.
Mm.
And one of the other regulars on Poe Unplugged, the great horror writer Holly Knightley, um, emphatically says the 1988 is superior, and that's where one of the many ways I need to disagree with her because I think the
Yeah.
1958 with uh, Steve McQueen
Hmm.
is the
Yeah.
superior version.
Yeah, I like the original better too.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't, and I understand it from a perspective of certain people. They develop certain taste in certain generations,
Hmm.
Fair enough.
and
Yeah.
they don't really understand the aura or the appeal of some of the older shows and the older things like the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's not, and I guess that's a lot of people expect a lot of blood and gore and everything, but they don't realize that some of the older shows and everything, they never showed blood. They never showed any kind of things like the gore and everything. It was all implied because it was all a psychological thing. And so that's the thing. It's like, it's all about like the War of the Worlds. It's all about tricking the mind and tapping into a person's innate fear of certain things that of the unknown.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like with you, Steve, I would go with the 1958 version over the 1988 version. But for me, the 80s were just, I don't know what we were on, but we were tripping in oh so many different ways because we had this wild hair, different colors. I mean, I don't think I ever actually matched any socks the whole time in the 80s. I'm just saying. Uh,
And this has
so
been
yeah,
three cranky purists complain about the past by
yes,
Carmen and Jeanie.
yes.
Oh,
Exactly. But
oh my goodness.
it has its good meanings. It has good bad, because I mean, there have been very few, but there have been some remakes that I will admit they took the good parts of the original and they made it a little bit better. So, but very few, but they did.
It can be done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It can be done. Yes,
absolutely.
I will admit that.
So, all right, Steve. So let's talk about Potable Poe. And so kind of tell us, all the inspiration, all everything about kind of what went into this book.
Sure. I guess I want to start by acknowledging that you two, unbeknownst to me, I think we both were working in darkness, not understanding each other. But at the
Yeah,
same time,
yeah.
you were doing the flavored raven,
Right.
um,
Yes.
and so I think you can probably appreciate more than anyone the idea that this kind of conceit of taking Poe's stories
Mm-hmm.
and Poe's material and translating them into edible form.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and as part of, I think, uh, a broader theme that comes through at Poe Fest, maybe we can talk about a little bit later, which
Mm-hmm.
is um, Edgar Allan Poe's the genre that he's created and the corpus of his work um, translates into many other forms, into music.
Yeah.
In Poem Blood, we've talked about the album by Alan Parsons Project, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Tales of Mystery and Imagination, that takes Poe stories place in music. I read something just the other day that there was a 1975 opera written by a guy named Dominic Argento called The Voyage of Edgar Allan Poe. And that opera has just been recorded for the first time in almost 50 years.
Okay.
Um, and so my point is just there's so many different. Oh, and the other thing that everyone forwards to me emails that you probably receive as well about uh, the Poe speakeasies that are all around the country
Yes.
where they're creating these
Yes.
cocktails.
Mm-hmm.
And in all these forms, you're taking these writings from so long ago and finding new ways to interpret them and express them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was for me, I think, the motivation behind Potable Poe. Perhaps for you, the motivation behind Flavored Raven, um, and it came about in last year. Every October, I turn over my blog, which I've been talking about, Chasing Phantoms.
Mm-hmm.
I turn it over to 31 days through the month of October of some theme, some Halloween style theme. So
Okay.
one year I reviewed Halloween candy, a different one every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Another year I reviewed Frankenstein movies. One, there are so many of them, one each day.
Yes.
And so last year I decided I'm going to take 31 Edgar Allan Poe stories or poems
Mm-hmm.
and translate them into cocktails. And the parallel track, in terms of, in addition to placing these in my blog, is I was collecting material for this book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, each cocktail in some way tries to interpret or evoke some part of the story. An example I'll give you is the system of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, I wanted a cocktail that had tar and feather in some way. So I used
Wow.
a chocolate sauce as the tar, and then I made white chocolate feathers. I got a mold, a silicone
Mm-hmm.
mold to make little feathers with white chocolate, and kind of glued them onto the tar. I have to confess that none of these cocktails is especially good. Uh,
Ah,
the, 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 the visual aesthetic was much more important to me
yeah.
than the actual taste of them. Um, but it was fun, and in the story, even if you don't make any of the cocktails,
Mm-hmm.
for each entry, you get an excerpt from the story
Mm-hmm.
itself. You get my own interpretation of it, kind of a little mini review of it. You
Yeah.
get a photo of the finished cocktail. You get the recipe itself, and then you get a little trivia point about the story. And
Yeah.
so, if, at the end of going through 31 of these, you may not have a whole appreciation for the drinks, but I think you will have a greater appreciation for Edgar Allan Poe.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, like you said, the pictures of the cocktails are very aesthetically pleasing. Like when you like I was flipping back through it because I read it a while back when it came out, and the system of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. And I remembered, like you said, the feathers made out of the
Mhm.
chocolate. And it's just like, just the tar and feather, you pull out of that. And that's just amazing. And I just think that's awesome. Another one that I know, I think, have not tried any of these yet, but I think it would probably taste really good. I was looking for the page. Was The Businessman, page 2022.
Oh
Let me
yes,
put
yes,
this one
yes.
there. It sounds delightful. It really does.
The Businessman is one of those stories, and again, I use the books a way to get a little deeper into the stories. Businessman is
Hmm.
an interesting and not that well known
No.
um,
Hmm.
uh, Edgar Allan Poe piece, but in it, he's essentially harvesting cat tails. I mean, the actual tails off of
Yeah.
cats, which is a horrible thing. Let me just stipulate.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I wanted to make a drink that had some kind of a cattail in it, and I used a rosemary sprig.
Yes.
And then I started thinking, well, what goes well with rosemary? And so I kind of experimented around a little bit, came up with a mix of vodka and lemonade and Saint Germain. And
Hmm.
um, I happen to love rosemary. I'll put it in anything.
Yeah.
Uh, so for me, it was for midsummer hot day, maybe what you're experiencing this weekend. You should make
Yes.
yourself a businessman cocktail.
Exactly, exactly. And then another one that I thought was really cool was the King Pest one, and of course we have a connection in Tennessee with that story because of Andrew Jackson. But just the where you took the picture, I'll let you talk about it. It just makes it even better, like just the presentation of it. But it also sounds very delicious too.
Yeah, the so I have to confess, each of the pictures is of the actual cocktail. I
Hmm.
mixed it up and took a picture of it. The
Hmm.
backgrounds I used I did a photoshopping. So
Yeah,
this
we
particular
did
one,
some of that for ours as well
oh,
because
that's right, yeah.
mhm, yeah,
Um, but again, I just want to emphasize that what you see in terms of the cocktail is actually the way the cocktail turned out.
yeah,
Um, King Pest. This is one. It's really hard to pigeonhole. And I think the point I'd really want to make here, and again, this is something that both of you have talked about before, is
mhm,
Edgar Allan Poe he's not just a gothic horror writer, and he's
you're right.
done so many different genres. And
Hmm.
Pest comes through in part as a parody, as kind of a comedy,
Hmm.
but it's also set in this incredibly um, gloomy, dispiriting kind of setting around death and bones and all this kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to present it appropriately in a skull, which is how part of the drinking was going on. And I had
Yeah.
to buy myself a skull glass. I can't believe I didn't already have one, but
Yeah.
Amazon is everything for you. So we got one of those, and then I used blackstrap, um, which is which is mentioned in the story, which
Mm.
is a kind of rum, which has this just wonderful kind of mahogany color, and that's what you see in the photograph is that darkness, that mahogany darkness of the blackstrap within
Yeah.
the skull, and then I set it in a graveyard.
Yeah. And that just was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, anything you put in a graveyard is awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
except for maybe the
Not
dead
just the
bodies, but that's
not
just,
just the dead body.
yeah, not just for dead bodies. I'm just saying.
Oh.
But like you were saying, Steve, about each one of the cocktails, they may not have come out to taste to the way you wanted or anything, but you were building it to because it was invoking something from the story. And
Exactly. I can't emphasize enough that I think there is so much depth and uh, his stories are so robust that we can continue to learn a lot from them today. And the forcing mechanism of trying to instead of just reading the story yet again, trying to think about, well, what are the key elements in this that would translate into a cocktail? What pieces of this are uh, would inform a taste, and it
Yeah.
just forces you to think about it in a different way. And again, I think as an exercise, it doesn't have to be cocktails. You can do anything. People, you can do, certainly people have done it through food, as you have.
Mm-hmm.
People do it through music. People do it through art, and we see a lot of that at Poe Fest each year. We do it through dance.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
which is, again, it's just fascinating that there's what it makes me wonder about is what is a common thread through all this. If you look at the people that come to like Poe Fest, or the people that come online
Mm-hmm.
to Poe Unplugged, which I recommend anyone watching this come to the next meeting, which I think is Morella. Do you have that
Yes. Yes,
correct?
yeah,
Morella.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
these people coming from so many different perspectives, and then we all read the same story, but we come at it in our kind of takeaway is entirely different. We get into some debates, etc. But I people approach, take so many different things from it, and I'm wondering what is the underlying common thread that all of us enjoy. What is it about Poe that draws all of us? And
Mm-hmm.
is it that he's speaking to the human condition that, or aspects of the human condition that aren't always acknowledged? Is it just this kind of nostalgia for um, coming into the 19th century? The way that a lot of people read Sherlock Holmes, that's one of the big attractions. You're back to Victorian England.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's more than that. I think that there is something psychological, something that Poe taps into our psychology and our soul that
Mm-hmm.
all of us find intriguing in some way, and that's why you get such a disparate group of people that it's not just goths. That Edgar Allan Poe, not just for goths anymore, right?
Right.
nope,
That
A
needs to
lot
be
of
a t-shirt or a bumper
yeah,
sticker.
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's a really very valid question. And I think the answer is different for every single person in a way, because when and this just came to my mind when you were talking about that, Steve, it's like Poe is an onion. He's at that very heart, and he's got so many layers upon layers
Mhm.
that interconnect but stand alone. and you peel back one layer and there's something that you didn't even know was there. And I think that Jeannie and I, we've loved Poe for many, many years, since we were younger, and that goes for a lot of people. But in doing this podcast, we have peeled some of those layers and we're still not done. That's the beauty of it. The layers go so deep you just don't realize.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And you got to wonder if part of it is as society changes, we're
Hmm.
finding different ways to connect, with his original stories. It doesn't mean you need to. It's not like interpreting the Constitution where you need to go back and think about what the framers were originally thinking. You can just
Yeah.
say, "Here's where we are today, and here's where Poe's writings takes me." Um,
Hmm.
I'm, but there's something masterful about it. I think for me, the reason I was attracted to Poe in the first place,
Hmm.
it's it's kind of that intellectual side to it. I feel enlightened. I feel elevated when I read his writing. So
Yeah.
vocabulary, very complex sentence structure. His thoughts are quite deep and complex and unusual.
Hmm.
So I just feel very fulfilled and satisfied just by the way that he writes. But there are
Yeah.
other people that just like some of the horror stuff, it's like a good scare. Or again, he's written some very funny stuff. How to write a Blackwood article, and
Hmm.
those kinds of things. That just to the un to people who haven't dug into Edgar Allan Poe, you'd read that and say that's not Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Um, but I still think there's something that lies underneath it. It's this kind of intellectual thread. There is this um, exploration of the human psyche that he brings to all of his work,
Yeah.
um, including his poetry, which I don't pretend. Just you just finished the poet like Poe contest,
Hmm.
and look at all these people who are able to kind of continue this legacy, to write in ways that are informed by Poe, but it's unique new poetry.
Hmm.
I can't do that, but it continues to live on again through things like the Poet Like Poe contest.
Yeah. That is very true. And it just it's almost it's surreal, which is one of our degrees, and I think that's probably why it is a degree. But yeah, it's endless, timeless.
Well, the one thing that about Poe that we've talked about on Poe Unplugged is that he he hits different at different stages of life too.
Yeah.
So it's not just you read the story once at a certain age, and then when you go back and you reread it again, all of a sudden you get a whole different meaning or a whole different feeling, or it invokes a whole different memory because of things that have actually happened in your life that you can connect even more to with the story.
Yeah.
Which I think that's why Poe's transcended so many years into
Hmm.
century that people keep finding him. Like we were saying, he's not just for goth anymore. He's for anybody.
Yeah.
It's all about connecting. And it's like when I was watching one of my competition food shows. I love watching food competition shows. It's just so much fun because I'm like, oh, I like to cook, but yeah, that's not cooking. That's artistry.
Yeah.
And so, and this one judge, he was saying how when he judges food, he judges it on the feeling he gets, the memories that it can invoke
Hmm.
of what he's eating. And I'm like, that's so true. And that's kind of like what we did with the flavored raven and what you did with Potable Poe when you were pulling
Yeah.
out the different drinks and stuff. We may not consciously know what we're doing, but we're pulling on those memories, on those feelings, on things that, oh, wow, this is cool. We may be taking it literally. Like you said, he mentions certain alcohols and specific stories. But it's like, why? Why would we even want to step into that or even touch upon that if it wasn't something that we want to bring to other people that look, Poe isn't just another pretty face, you know. He's not just a nice sentence on a piece of paper. He's something that you need to experience. And this is why. I think that's what we did, at least in Flavored Raven, and I think you two and did it too with your Potable Poes. And
Yeah.
even in the first book that you wrote, that I was just so in love with, because I remember that's halfway through the book, I'm had to stop and go, this didn't really happen, but why do I think this is really true? You know,
Yes.
because
Yes.
I was like, Steve, what the, because I'm still thinking, okay. But
Oh,
I loved it because I was so into the idea that, huh, this had been really cool if this was real, that if this happened, because we always talk about Poe being a time traveler.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So why
Yeah.
not? And so that's the one thing that invoked from your first book that I read, Steve. And I want I keep want to call it what you first originally titled it, which is the title that I have of the book that I have. But
Oh, yeah. You're talking about
tell the real one.
Poe's
Post
last
Last
lament.
Lament.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Poe's Last Mint. Yes.
Yeah.
Lament. Lament. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
It,
keep wanting to say Latter Day Poe because that's what you
right.
originally.
Which
Yeah.
had been a working title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Post Last Lament was a fun one because, yeah, as you say, it imagines so many people are enthralled by kind of the final scenes of Poe's life, where
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
at Gunner's Hall and talking about Reynolds and uh,
Mm-hmm.
being in someone else's clothes, and it's a great, it's a perfect ending for a cinematic ending for a story like Poe's. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, what if it didn't end there? And it seems almost believable to me that the death had been faked. There's enough weird stuff going on where the death could be faked. And
Mm-hmm.
Poe died right at the time of uh, the gold rush in California. And
Yeah.
I'm living now in the gold country in Placerville. And so I
Right.
said, well, what if somehow uh, he got talked into um, coming out to California, kind of on a pretext, and it kind of ran from there. So yes, it was a fun way to explore Poe. And again, even though what I wrote never happened, I think I understood Poe a little better as a result of that exercise. Just as I'm sure you felt you understood Poe a little better as a result of trying to think about translating him into food.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime, or these dancers that put together the choreograph things for
Yeah.
Poe, you learn something about him when you force yourself to look beyond the words in the stories and think
Mm-hmm.
about what is the real essence to that.
Yeah. One of the things that just kind of came to mind thinking about, it kind of goes back to that onion with lots of layers. But Steve, when you were talking about that, so many people now are, creating Poe, bringing him into, like you said, dance, art, other, adaptations about his life or works, food and such. And it's like Poe, like no other author, maybe Shakespeare, comparatively, has this kind of following by people. And it's almost like all of us together are creating a real life Poe pop-up book because it's like he's popping off the page into these different forms of art. And it's just, I don't know, it's magical because when you think about other authors out there, we've got some amazing ones that have, come and gone. We still read them, but Poe lingers more
Yeah.
than most.
If you're not going to do a Poe pop-up book, I will. So
Ah, maybe we can
fabulous
collaborate. Let's
that is
collaborate.
a fabulous idea. I'm serious. That's just a great,
Oh,
great, great idea. Um,
oh.
but no, I think you're right. And I would even say Shakespeare. I don't know enough about Shakespeare, and again, we still read him. He's still
Mhm.
relevant, but it doesn't inspire the kind of
No.
devotion and kind of intrigue that I think that Edgar Allan Poe continues to do. And maybe who knows? Maybe Poe is uniquely American. He is our author here in the United States,
Yeah.
and maybe as Americans we feel a more affinity to him than somebody in another country.
Hmm.
But I just you say jazz is like the true American musical art form. I think
Hmm.
Poe and Mark Twain and a handful of others are these
Hmm.
really quintessential American authors.
Yeah.
That really speaks to my heart. But if I could turn things around and ask you a question briefly, because we're talking
Yeah.
about these different facets of Poe, how did you two settle? I've always wondered this. How did you two settle on the 6 degrees?
Well, some of them were obvious because of like horror literature, and with literature, it's his satire, it's his poetry, it's detective fiction. So it's got a lot of little branches from it. Science fiction and science, because he wrote both, that kind of was easy, those three. And then pop culture, because of how many times he shows up in cartoons and music and all of the
Yeah,
things that we're talking about right now. And then surrealism and Poe places were probably, I think, a little bit harder to like pull out. It's like we had those four, and then it's like, okay, we need two more if we're doing six. But then when you really look at, the people who followed him after with Charles Baudelaire, Salvador Dali, and so they were influenced by Poe, and they were, in that genre. Because Baudelaire was a surrealist before it was really coined. Um, there's some others too. I just can't think of the names. Jeanie may remember. And then it was like Poe was kind of a nomad. He moved several places. And so it was like we have to kind of frame some of this around where he lived, because all the different places have so many different qualities about them that Poe pulled from in all of his works. So,
And
and they were
especially,
influential on him.
yeah, and especially when you travel, it's kind of unusual not to find certain things. Like if you go to New Orleans, you're going to expect to have jazz. You're going to expect to find the things that where it was created in New Orleans.
Hmm.
But you're not expecting just to go to, like, we went to Delaware and all of a sudden here is a wall that's been dedicated to Edgar Allan Poe, and we're going like, when was he in Delaware? It's
Yeah.
like, and then in Boston they've made statues, and even when Carmen went to Alaska, there is like a coffee shop with Edgar Allan Poe in Alaska. So it's
Yeah.
like,
No, it's Poe
okay, the man,
Bay. That was
yeah,
Poe
Poe
Bay.
Bay.
A whole
So
bay named
the
after
man's
him.
still
wow.
traveling, and he's been dead all this time.
Yes.
So, but many things about it was that Poe has always been known for his horror. I mean, most people,
Hmm.
because of the Telltale Heart, they,
Yeah.
around Halloween, even now, some places, and good Lord above, some places already have Halloween stuff out for sale.
Uh,
And if you look in their Halloween section, there's always these things of Edgar Allan Poe
Yeah.
about the
yeah.
horror and
Hmm.
everything. But, and I guess as part of teachers, us being teachers, we're like, there's so much more to be educated about Poe than just horror.
Yeah.
He's more than Telltale Heart. He's more than The Raven.
Yeah.
There's so much more that needs to be said. And so when Carmen was starting the idea for the podcast, and she, talked to me about it, and I was like, oh, sure, I'll happily, join the bandwagon because I'm a
Yes.
Poe person and everything.
The
And
Poe
each
wagon.
time, yeah, the Poe wagon. So every time that we start talking about episodes about the 6 degrees, it's like we find something new. Like you brought up Alan Parsons Project, music. It's like, oh, I never knew because when Stevie Nicks did Annabelle Lee, I was like, I don't know why. I
Mhm.
remember hearing the song, but it never, tuned in that, oh, wait a minute, that's Edgar Allan Poe's story.
Yeah.
So it just, it was another way, in my opinion, it was another way to educate as a teacher
Yeah.
and give the the credit where credit was due for Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
He still needed to be learned, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn you something. That's what my papa always tell me. I'm gonna learn you something.
And with kind of putting him together, the whole 6 degrees of separation, it helped us to kind of look at, okay, this podcast is about Poe, but it's also about it's basically all about his influences on multiple ideas, genres, you name it. And so branching out like that, it becomes just this huge map of connections where, some things could fit into more than one of the 6 degrees.
Sure.
And they just, yeah. And so that's why we talk about different authors or musicians or whatever that were influenced by Poe. And they're endless is what we're finding. And there's just more and more people are doing what we're doing. And it's just it's amazing. Like we could probably go on for the rest of our lives talking about this.
Well, and it
I,
also says to Poe's in our DNA, whether we know it or not.
Hmm.
And it's like he's spreading that not genetically, but artistically
Yeah.
within each generation. Because when I was teaching middle school, I would see a kid sitting down and had a graphic novel that was written and it was all about Poe. And I'm
oh, really?
going, what? Where did you get that? So, oh, I found it and it's so good. And I was looking at it and I'm going, wow. So they're making graphic novels and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So they're there, but they're so, I remember back in the day, we all love cult hits. And that's what Poe is to me. He is a cult. He's got his own culture with his followers, and I think that's why Poe is still around today. Is because we are all just so entranced by Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah. Are you saying that it's a cult of personality?
Oh Lord, you had to go there.
I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, and speaking of endless, I mean the Poe puns also seem to be endless.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
I've always felt the whole 6 degrees concept that you guys came up with is brilliant because
Thank you.
just because, as you say, it's acknowledging these tendrils that can go out in many different ways. The Poe
Hmm.
places in particular, though, I thought, you talk about kind of rounding out the six, but I felt the Poe places is actually an incredibly important part of the 6 degrees because it's the physicality that there is it's acknowledging that Poe walked these streets. There still is the house on North Amity Street. There
Hmm.
still is the Poe Cottage, and even if those places weren't still here, the places acknowledges his being among us. It wasn't just intellectual. It wasn't just thoughts. It was he had to walk places. He had to talk, run into people. He had to interact with people.
Hmm.
I think the Pope Places gives it a literal grounding
Yeah.
to the 6 degrees. So I've always considered the six aspects you come up with just something that must have required a lot of thought, a lot of um, you know on a whiteboard trying to decide what those six are going to be. But in the end, I think it captures it perfectly.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say I still have the notes from our discussion of, kind of mapping things out. And
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think there were some other possibilities. I don't remember off the top of my head of categories that we could have used, but we just felt like this solidified everything.
Hmm.
That, to like in a circle of six, just, all these little things coming out from it, or
Yeah.
the Poe head.
It's the poetry of life.
Yes.
Poetry of life.
Yeah.
Get it? Poetry life.
Well,
Okay.
as Jeanie has the logo with, the book is literature, let's see. No, hold on. Yeah, and then
So the magnifying glass is for the detective fiction,
yeah,
and
and
then the raven is the UFO is for sci-fi. The
yeah,
brain is for the intellectual, like surrealism.
yeah,
The tombstone is for the Poe places,
yes, and
and I think the book represents horror because of the tell. Or no, wait a minute. There's a heart in there somewhere in there.
no, hold on. I always forget this sometimes, but I think the Raven is pop culture, actually, and the book is
Yeah,
literature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what they represent, and yeah. But yeah, thanks for asking that, because not that many people ask that question, and yeah, we're about to start season 6, and so sometimes we forget about it, just their origin of it all.
Well, six is an auspicious year to really highlight the 6 degrees, just because, again, number six.
That's
Uh,
true. Yeah, that's true.
Right. And we
Jeannie,
got to add
ideas.
in that it's, yes. No, but the one idea I had was like we're starting the sixth season in the year of 26. So,
Hmm.
and then it's the 6 degrees. So I'm like,
yeah.
no, we're conjuring the wrong thing.
Well,
A 666. No. Okay.
well, Steve, going back to Potable Poe, were there any stories that you like, because you based it on the 31 days of October.
Yeah.
So were there some that you wished you would have added in if you could have done more, or could you do a book two? Possibly. I think you could totally.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. To be honest with you, my selections were based less on is this the perfect story and more on can I pull off a cocktail.
Gotcha. No, that makes
um,
sense. It
uh,
does.
but now having been through it and successfully coming up with 31 and frankly learning a lot, I could
Mhm.
see another edition coming out. Um, at the moment, though, what I'm working on is a collection of short stories of Poe inspired short stories.
Mhm.
And actually, it's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought of this before, but we were just talking about the 6 degrees.
Mhm.
This book I'm writing looks like it's going to have 5 stories in it, but each
Wow.
one is supposed to reflect a degree or a facet of Poe's writing. So I've got
Right.
a Dupin mystery because
Mhm.
even though he only wrote 3 or 4 of those,
Right.
they were so influential that yeah, I think that's really uh,
Mhm.
uh, important. I got kind of a classic ghost story. This kind of like what was it? Metzen
But
Met.
then you're seeing,
Thank you for
That's
pronouncing that for
interesting.
me.
Yes.
Um,
yeah.
I've got kind of an adventure tale, like the hands fall.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is just show kind of the waterfront of I'm 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 inspired by Poe, but these 5 stories are actually all very different from one another, just
Mhm.
as Poe's
Yes.
tales were. So
Yeah.
that'll be coming out by the end of the year. That my
Oh,
objective
awesome.
every year is to get something published during the calendar year so that I have something to submit to the Saturday Visitor Awards the following year.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, I'll be anxious to read it.
And Potable Poe was submitted for Saturday Visit Award for this year, but we'll see. I think they're supposed to have uh, nominees selected by the end of this month.
Yes. Yeah, July 31st. We
So
we
please,
also submitted
everyone
to
out there,
Flavor's Raven.
please bribe the judges at Bill Fest, Bill Baltimore.
Oh. Yeah, the flavored raven is also in contention. So
and what category is Flavored Raven in? Is
let's
it
see, hold on.
adaptation or
We
Adaptations.
did adaptation, yes.
okay? I think we are going head to head then,
Uh-oh.
unfortunately. Anyway,
Oh
That's
I
well.
too
I will be
bad.
happy to get I'll be happy to get second place.
We'll be happy to get second place against you too. So,
Yes, absolutely.
friendly competition is
Yeah.
always good.
Oh,
So,
yes, absolutely.
well, you talked about how you're working on your current degree, not degree book, which
Uh-huh.
is cool. And you've got the Potable Poe, and you may not want to extend to a, a second, but
Yeah, we'll see.
it's
Yeah.
all it's all about there.
Hmm.
Uh, so I guess, is there anything non-Poe that you're working on?
Not at the moment, but just this last year, I finished my first novel,
Oh,
which is called Sundial in the Shade, and uh, I'm actually really very happy with it. It came to me. We talked about music a moment ago. It came to me. There's a song called oh my gosh. Uh, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway uh,
mm-hmm.
by Genesis, and in it there's this character called Rail, and I just liked that character so much. I wrote a story about him, and it may or and I'll give away kind of the conceit of the story that this kid who's kind of a delinquent um, comes across through a variety of convoluted way, comes across a copy of a book that Benjamin Franklin wrote. Actually, Benjamin Franklin's autobiography,
Hmm.
and this is true. Edgar Allan, or Benjamin Franklin's autobiography includes these 13. Back to numerology again.
Mm-hmm.
13 precepts that every person ought to follow. He wrote this as a kid.
Hmm.
He wrote those 13 as a kid, tried to follow them his whole life. So things
Right.
like, industry and honesty and all these kinds of characteristics.
Hmm.
So Rail is this delinquent, comes across this thing and through a plot device feels compelled to try and adopt them one at a time. So it's an exploration of morality, of personal agency, um, I think it's a fun story. It's Sundial in the Shade, available on Amazon, highly recommended, 5 stars.
Okay.
Awesome.
That is awesome. I think that sounds very interesting. And I have actually taught the 13,
Oh, really?
yes, years ago when I taught junior English, that was in our textbook
Oh,
available to teach. And yes, and we would read it, we would discuss it. Usually I'd have them do some kind of little writing thing about it. Like if you could add one more, what would you
uh-huh.
add to it? Or pick one that you feel like you could follow wholeheartedly and not falter, from it. And we always would have fun with it. And like the kids would, some of them were like, why did he add this? It was great discussion with,
I'll bet. Oh,
yeah,
I'll bet that age is a perfect age to be exploring those kinds of questions.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
one of the things that my character runs into in this story is recognizing that sometimes really trying to fulfill one of those values requires that you kind of drop off one of the others. They come into conflict sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Hmm.
in a way that, like, what was a movie, a Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey? Sometimes
Oh, mm-hmm.
can't always be honest. But
Absolutely.
anyway, I think teaching that to like middle school kids would really be helpful. Not just interesting, but I think really helpful. People don't stop and kind of get introspective enough. It seems like we're all just performing for other people in the kind of
Mm-hmm.
TikTok generation. But getting introspective about what are my values, what are my morals,
Yeah.
the
That,
more we can do that. And
Well,
well,
and
that
I guess the last thing I'd say, just kind of jumping off on that point, is I worry that the kids that we as a people just are not reading enough at all these days of anything.
Yeah.
And I just read an essay the other day in the paper that essentially said reading is dead. It went through the statistics on how schools aren't assigning, reading. Forget the great books; they're not really assigning all of any books any longer, and
Hmm.
people just don't read for pleasure anymore. And I start to wonder, kind of, what the future holds if we as a civilization just aren't going to be putting the time into reading, let alone, I mean, not to mention reading the kind of stuff that Poe wrote, which requires so much patience. He sets these long descriptions, his sentences are long. He does a lot of kind of a setup to a story before you get to a payoff.
Hmm.
In the TikTok generation, that's not how we want to read. It's not interesting to us.
Yeah. I will say I do disagree with that reading is dead. I think it has fallen back with some people, but I know that in teaching today, a lot of what we teach are excerpts, and we do put in some novels, some plays, not like we used to. Used to, we would read tons of books throughout the school year, but our standards are changing for I think it's the 2029 school year, where we're going to go back to longer texts like
Oh, really?
novels. And I'm very excited about that because short stories are fantastic and plays are fantastic, but you really get a sense of longevity, I can't talk, of reading with your fluency, your comprehension, if you're
Mhm.
actually reading a full book rather than just this excerpt from this nonfiction piece article, or you're
Mhm.
reading just a little excerpt from a book that's pulled out. And I'm very excited about that aspect of
So
teaching.
is that Tennessee school
Yes. Hmm.
standards? Okay.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe the tide is going to turn back again. I hope so, because
Yeah.
um, I I just think there's so much that just the process of reading in terms of brain development, in terms of just thinking, it's activating different parts of your brain than if you're just going to watch a video.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm back to sounding like a cranky old man, so I apologize.
Oh, no, it's all
Oh,
good.
yeah. Yeah, trust me, you sound like we do most of the time when we're talking about the teaching standards and the stuff that the kids turn in today. And it's like, yeah, let's not talk about it because that blood pressure medication was invented because of a teacher that to teach children how to read and write. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were talking about with Benjamin Franklin, uh, on the other aspect of it, when I was teaching American history, I was teaching Poor Richard's Almanac.
Really?
That's
Most people
cool.
didn't understand because I was using it as a reference about the culture of the time and
Mhm.
about how to look at it from the perspective. Because I would take on like, have you ever heard this saying? And they would say, like, oh, my dad says that all the time. I
Yeah.
said, but do you know what it means?
Hmm.
Early to bed, early to rise, and they're like, no, I just thought that, he was being weird because, parents and kids. But when we got into it and we started reading it and we got to dissect it, because, I was talking about the time before and what led up to the American Revolution and about how, Benjamin Franklin was so much more than what people thought he was. And me trying to tell people, no, he was never a president. So stop saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Don't ever. Okay, he was never a president, not because he probably couldn't have done a good job, but because he didn't want the job, number one. But he was all about literature. He loved writing because he created a printing press. He would print things and he had a newspaper and he was an ambassador to France and all these other things that Ben Franklin was so much more because he was a lot like Poe. And a lot of people don't understand that Benjamin Franklin created the first hospital. Benjamin Franklin is the reason we have a fire department.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's the reason we have lightning rods, and so there was so much more to him, kind of like Poe. But the only thing is Ben Franklin Yeah, most people only remember him for having a kite on a string, which no, that's not true. That's not completely true, but the
Oh,
things. But yeah, poor Richard's Almanac is just one of the things I love to teach during that time when during American history, because I love how the kids would just get this light bulb moment. Oh, that's what that means? Yes, that's what that means. That's what he
mm-hmm.
was talking about. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. And Benjamin
Makes me
Franklin,
feel
yes.
good to know that you two are teaching then, because again, these are things that I think aren't that common. Teaching
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Richard's Almanac or teaching the 13 Virtues. Um, but again, it doesn't have to be Benjamin Franklin, but I do think there is so much that's been written that we can learn from in the modern era. So let's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
keep let's at least ignite in the kids a love for reading, where they're going to go seek out this kind of thing on their own.
Yes.
Exactly. That's the whole point. It's like with food to entice someone to want to try a new food. It's the same thing with like entice somebody to want to read a new book, entice somebody to watch a movie or listen to music. Because
Mhm.
most of the time you just ignore it because you're like, I probably won't like that, and you move on. But if you
Yep.
have somebody that kind of, lights a fire under you, it's like, oh, did you know that so and so, you'll find it here. And it's like, oh, really? Yeah, just go check it out. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So for anyone listening and anyone watching, if you want to see Potable Poe, go check it out on
Yes.
Amazon by
Yep,
Yes.
Steve
please do.
Yes.
Boilard,
Yes.
and
Thank
check
you.
out his other works. What's the name of that last one you're talking about
Those
with
last lament. Or Sundial in the Shade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sundial on the Shade. Yeah, I'm glad you
Mhm.
said Poe's Last Lament because I started to say Latter-day Saint again. Okay, because I was like, nope, wrong title. But
Oh,
yeah, and these are the kind of things because you can use word of mouth correctly to get people to go to the right spots. So
that's right. That's
Yep.
right.
go check it out.
Yeah. Steve, do you have a working title or a title that you've decided upon for your Poe collection that you're working on?
So I don't want to confuse things further based on Jeannie's comments, but I think I probably will use Latter Day Poe for this later collection.
Nice.
Because again,
Okay.
it is Poe brought to the current, written in the current time, but it's we'll see if I end up sticking with that. But
Okay. All
it'll
right.
be out
Hey,
by the
it's a
end of the
good
year.
title if I can
Yay.
remember it. So yay.
Yeah, exactly. It'll make it easier on you, Jeannie.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and Steve, I hope you get the nomination for Potable Poe, and I do
As I
hope you
hope you do
win.
for Flavored Raven.
Yes, because your work with Poe ideas and things that you've done I've enjoyed all of it and
Thank
just
you.
can't wait for the other collection to come out. So
I appreciate that.
you're welcome. Very
And
well
I'm and
deserved.
I'm thankful for the conversation today. And again, I always am excited to see what's going on with Poe Unplugged. So we're glad that you're going into season 6.
Yay.
Yay.
Yes,
And
thank you.
666. Yay. Okay.
So, Steve, tell our listeners and viewers where they can find your blog again, because that
It is
has
called
also,
it is called Chasing Phantoms. You can just Google Chasing Phantoms blog, but the website is Waytrips, Waytrips,
okay,
waytrips.travel.blog.
okay, perfect, perfect.
Cool.
Any other thoughts before we say adieu?
Have yourself a businessman cocktail this afternoon. It's going to be hot.
That's right. All
Oh,
right, yes, perfect.
yes.
Oh,
Cheers.
yes. And I guess on that note,
We
we
are
We
are
are
Poe
Poe
out.
out.
out.